you can just hit the button.
It's
Great.
recording now.
All right, we're on live TV. Thank you everyone for inviting me here today. It's such a blessing to be with you all. I know I've gotten to know some of you over the years, and you've been very patient with me in that I can't remember your names. But we don't have that problem tonight because we're all wearing name tags. And mine says Hermano Diego, which is my name in Spanish. This is Ole, the school where I went to in Mexico over the summer. So that was my name there. That's in Spanish. My patron's Saint Didacus is San Diego, like in California.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm giving you this presentation on my Italy trip this past January. This was a dream come true for me because back in 2022, when I took my lifetime vows, it's customary for the brothers to travel to Rome and Assisi to celebrate their lifetime profession. However, I wasn't able to do that because it was during the time of COVID, and there were still many restrictions on travel. So after that year, in 2023, I entered the St. Paul Seminary, and because they had their own trips and school and all that, made it very difficult for me to make it to Italy. But because that trip is wired into their program, I was blessed to be able to go with the seminary this time. So thanks be to God for the St. Paul Seminary and getting me there.
There's Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Welcome,
Come
Steve.
on in.
We're just getting started.
Find a place
So-
to sit.
Here's one of the posters on the walls that you could see when you entered the churches. I think that's a great way to start. I would love to see this in every church in the United States. Clothe yourselves with modesty. But as a brother, obviously I don't have too much issue with that. But yeah, some of those high school boys and girls sometimes kind of wonder.
Do you see that in a lot of churches?
In the United States?
No, in Italy.
Oh, every so often. I think people are generally respectful. They know the rule. Okay, and we have Brother Pio. Okay, so first stop on the trip. You can see here, I like to take pictures of the maps when I'm on the plane to see how long it takes and where the plane is flying. Brother Pio, if you don't mind just sitting and listening, I'd be very grateful for that. And I kind of like to see the line go over the country to see, geographically, I'm over England right now, or I'm over France right now. That's really, a fascinating thing for me. But one of the greatest things for me was that the first day we were expected to go there, we were expected to fly into Amsterdam, but there was a major snowstorm that prevented us from flying in there. So we had to reschedule our flight for the next day. Now, the group split up in Paris, and the deacons ended up going to Notre Dame for Mass at the cathedral there. And I'm not a deacon, but myself and one other of my classmates was paired with this diaconate group, and we were all invited to go to the Notre Dame Cathedral for Mass. And my two favorite movies are The Prince of Egypt and Hunchback of Notre Dame. So I was really greatly blessed to finally be in the newly restored Notre Dame. And here is one of our deacons from our class, Deacon Riley. He's from the Winona Rochester Diocese, so he got to celebrate with the Mass. And they're very strict about pictures and video there. So this is a rare photo because as soon as they took out their phone to take this photo or video, someone came over and waved their finger. Like Jurassic Park, So very blessed to have that photo. One of the first places that we stopped, this was on our own, myself and a few good seminarian friends from my class. They are Pro Ecclesia Sancta brothers at St. Mark's, if you're familiar with them. They wanted to visit their founder, St. Ignatius of Loyola. So we went to the Jesu where both his body is, as well as the arm of St. Francis Xavier that baptized 30,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a great blessing to be in that church. These pictures do not do it justice because I was still figuring out my camera situation the first day, and these are shot from my GoPro cam. That's about the only thing I could figure out how to work at that point, but still got some nice quality pictures. And then later on, we visited the Jesu again as a whole class. We had Mass in the room where St. Ignatius of Loyola passed away.
Brother Didacus, do you mind just going a little bit that way? There you go, now you can
There
see.
we go.
Yeah,
That's great.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, so over here?
No,
Either
right
way.
there.
Oh, I'm sorry, not there, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, here, like that. There.
Okay,
Up
okay.
against the wall.
Oh,
Here's
my.
another room in the Jesu. When you walk down the halls, these are optical illusions. So this is like 3D art. So it looks very stretched when you're far away, but when you get up close, it looks like they're actual paintings on the wall. So that's a really beautiful place to visit. I once was at another place like that in Japan. It was a museum, like a ninja art museum, where there were ninjas and monsters on the wall that they had different perspectives. And because it was the Christmas season, there were nativity sets all over the place. And it was very beautiful to see those, just the handiwork, the detail, the craftsmanship. And there was even one set close to our place. It was called the Domus Romana Sacerdotales, which is like a house for priests. And it was the church in Rome that was closest to the Vatican, if that makes sense. And they had little animatronic nativity sets, so you could see kind of like Mary nursing Jesus. And then they had the nativity scene outside of the St. Peter's in the Vatican as well, with the beautiful Christmas tree.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then there was one time where I was walking the streets, and it was on the Feast of the Epiphany. And in that aforementioned church, there was a little side chapel, and they welcomed me in. They said, come on in, come see the living nativity. So I was actually praying the joyful mysteries at that time, and so I said, well, now I really get to enter into the mysteries in a profound way. And there were even some people playing like bugle horns outside to welcome people in. Then, of course, the food is always a highlight. Yeah, I can't possibly cover everything that was on the menu in Italy, but some of my favorites were the gelato. Of course, when we hear gelato in the United States, it's a very specific kind of ice cream, Italian ice cream, but there the word gelato just means ice cream. So that's why you're seeing ice cream, but it's gelato. And then the pizza, of course, there's variations on the flavors. They don't necessarily have all the flavors that we're accustomed to, but nevertheless, it's quite delicious. And the pasta there, some gnocchi. We had 3 meals that could be offered to us every single day if we wanted at the house. They also changed all of our sheets in our beds and cleaned all of our rooms every single day. So it was quite an incredible treat.
I want to go out.
Wow.
I tried my limited Italian as best as I could, and if they saw that I was struggling, they would switch to English. But there was one maid there that spoke Spanish, and I spoke Spanish with her because I'm a little more comfortable in Spanish than Italian, and I didn't want to use English as much as possible. And I asked her, why do you speak Spanish? And she said, my boyfriend is from Spain.
That'll do it.
So that was a blessing. Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, that's right. It is a romance language for a reason.
There you go.
And then, of course, there's different desserts that we don't necessarily eat here, like pistachio cheesecake. This was at allegedly the Pope's favorite restaurant. Yeah. One of the first things that we did was we had the Wednesday audience with the Pope. a day before that, the deacons celebrated Mass at St. Peter's. I have not included those pictures because that was not part of my experience, but it's worth mentioning. One of the deacons got trapped in New York, and when he was able to fly over, he made it just in time for the papal Mass. And if you know what a celebrant is, it basically is an identification for your diaconate or priesthood. He was flashing it to all the guards, and they were just saluting him, and he got right on time to the papal Mass.
Hey, Brother Didacus,
Yeah.
is that Deacon Pat Sorrow?
That is Deacon Pat
Wow.
Sarles, who you know because he's
Right.
from your parish.
Our
So
parish,
so
yeah.
you can
Look
give
at that.
give him grief that he's shaking hands with the Pope.
Yeah!
That is cool.
Well, we're a teaching parish. He's
That's
actually
right.
from South Dakota.
That's
sorry.
right.
Or North Dakota, excuse
Yes,
me.
yes.
Look at that.
So some of us were there to meet him. We started in the very back, and the Lord gave us a higher place, so we moved closer up to the front there. I was still on jet lag with all my other fellow seminarians, and so we were not sure if the Pope would even come towards us, and he was still in the midst of blessing many couples and disabled. So I just decided that I wanted to return back to the house and sleep. These guys are in their 20s, I'm in my 30s, so
Yeah,
I
make a difference.
I was like, I'll pray for the Pope. I don't need to shake hands with him, but I'm
Yeah,
so
look how
grateful
close
that
you missed
my
it.
classmates,
I was like, look how close, look at that.
I'm grateful my classmates got
Yes.
to shake hands with him. So.
Yeah.
And then of course, here's an image of him sitting there.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
He's in, I don't know if he currently is, I believe he is, he's delivering addresses on how to modernize with Vatican II, like how to correctly interpret it, or how to interpret it going forward. And then the second half of the Wednesday audience is greeting all the people from all the countries. So, he greeted us in English, from St. Paul Seminary, and we all stood up and cheered. So, yeah. The Americans are the most emphatic, I would say. Maybe some of the Latins as well. And then we visited the Colosseum. So learned a lot of fascinating things about this. These layers weren't always there. They sort of eroded or come up over time. But one thing I learned from the Colosseum is that people weren't sent to their deaths for fun. Quite the contrary, the Romans wanted them to live to prove their heroism. So if they survived, then they would get all these lauds and honors. But of course, it contributes to this culture of death that we see even today, where the strongest, the fittest survive. So that's a lot of what our Christian heritage was sent into. And that's why a lot of the language that you see in St. Paul of running the race or fighting have all these gladiatorial images, because these were the most applicable to the culture that they were evangelizing at the time. So to say, we obtained the crown through Christ, the Romans would have understood what the value of the crown was. And so this converted many pagans to the Christian tradition through the language that was used, the imagery. They do have crosses erected there now. That's a fairly recent development. And this is kind of hard to see, but on one of the walls they have the 3 crosses of Good Friday, which you can see there inscribed. So it's a very notable Christian site, even if it's not ostensibly so. Another place that we visited was the Tre Fontane, the 3 fountains. I won't go into all the detail because it's a very long story, but the Blessed Virgin Mary has appeared there and the vision has been approved. Interestingly, as you know, in order for a vision to be approved, it must go through the bishop. Well, who is the Bishop of Rome?
Oh.
The Pope.
Yeah.
So he approved this vision.
Let's Vatican approved.
Yeah, exactly.
In
So,
through the back door,
A
kind
little bit more pull than your average.
and this sister was from England. I wish I could remember the litany of things she said, because I was barreling out every single moment with laughter. The things she was saying, she was just so witty and spunky. But she was our guide. And then there were different statues around the property, like St. Maximilian Kolbe there. So,
So when was it?
And
When
this-
was that approved?
I think the 1950s, and so
Okay.
this order sort of developed out of that. That's why the sister was wearing green, like she would say, like a lady, you know. And the apparition appeared to a man who was an unbeliever, like an atheist, and he tried to disprove God. Very similar to the story of Alphonse Ratisbonne, if you're familiar with that. Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal appeared to him, and he converted, gave up his animosity towards the church, and became a Catholic priest. So, very radical conversions. This Tre Fontane is the place where St. Paul was martyred. So you can see here, this is the cell where he prayed his last night. So it was a great blessing to be in that cell and to pray with St. Paul's intercession there. This is the column on which St. Paul was executed. So that may be where that dent came from. I don't know. But there are also, this is hard to see because of the shadows, but there is a bronze head there. There's 3 markings that indicate the place where St. Paul's head was said to have bounced. And in those 3 places, 3 fountains, Tre Fontane, sprang up. And they perpetually kept running. They didn't stop. In the second half of the 20th century, probably the 1960s or so, the water was becoming polluted, so they suppressed the water, but it is still flowing, and there are some petitions to reinitiate its visibility. Now, I just wanted to mention that the next image may be graphic for some of you, so if you are sensitive, I would advise you to close your eyes, and I can tell you when to open them. But this is an image of St. Paul's head being executed, or his head being severed or cut off. So, there's a lot of depictions like that throughout Rome. I don't have any pictures of this other place we visited. I'll mention it later if I get to it, but it's the English College, where a lot of the seminarians were sent from England to Rome, and then they were sent back. So a lot of the martyrdoms of those saints were depicted in very graphic detail at the English College. It was very powerful. Then we visited the catacombs. For anyone who's claustrophobic, I recommend you skip this site because the walls are very narrow. But something that really stood out to me was that you could basically visit your loved ones from behind the wall. So that's something I reflected on my final project was when we visit cemeteries here, a lot of people may still have reverence for visiting their loved ones and the grave sites, but even so, our loved ones are way deep beneath the ground. I can only imagine what kind of intimacy these people had with their loved ones, being able to just visit them from the other side of the wall and know that they were there. Body, the soul that would come back into that body. And of course, they had other festivals and things that they did, and they bring food and drink and just spend time with their loved ones, like the Day of the Dead. We had 2 free weekends in Italy, so we were able to go wherever we wanted for Saturday and Sunday on those 2 weekends that we were there. And already ahead of time, my best friend from the seminary, Blaine, and I planned which trips we wanted to go. And he's very big into Benedictine spirituality, and he knows that I'm very big into Franciscan spirituality, so we decided the first weekend we'll go visit some Benedictine sites, and the next weekend we'll visit the Franciscan sites.
Nice.
Yes, and when we arrived at the train station with our tickets, we were told that a planned Italian strike was happening. They plan it every month. They know exactly when it's going to happen, and they just consistently do it. So when we arrived there, we were told that our train was delayed 30 minutes. We decided to wait. As the time was approaching, they said, your train is ready to leave, it's going to leave in 10 minutes. So Brent, he's the oldest seminarian at the seminary, he's in my class also. He encountered a man who was willing to lead us there, and he led us to the train and then stamped his foot and held out his hand. So Brent gave him some money and said, well, we would have never made it to this train because it was so far back in the platform.
Yeah.
So I don't mind giving this guy a little bit of money. When we got on the train, we were sitting there waiting for it to depart. The conductor came through all the cars and said, train's canceled, everybody off.
Oh,
So we heard of one other story of a group traveling to Assisi, and they were halfway through their trip when the conductor came on and said, strike, everybody off. And so they're like, well, what do we do? And some guy had ordered an Uber with 6 extra seats, so they all were able to go to Assisi together. As for us, we were trying to recalibrate and make a new game plan. And we said, where can we go that we don't have to rely on the trains? And are we intent on finding another way to get to Monte Cassino, where Saint Benedict is resting? And I interjected at that point, and I said, you guys, Blaine does not like being in Italy. I doubt he is ever going to come back here. I said, and he really wanted to see Saint Benedict. We have to find a way to get there. And Brent said, well, I can rent a car. So that's what we ended up doing. We rented a car. And these streets are crazy. Let me tell you, look at this route. Very perpendicular. That's just one street.
wow.
But we traveled and had beautiful sights of the countryside, which we would have gotten on the train as well. But we arrived this beautiful clear day. Here's Monte Cassino, the monastery that Benedict founded for himself and his monks. Here's inside of the monastery where Benedict is buried. Oh, there were also like portraits of different depictions of biblical events, so like the life of St. John the Baptist there. And then here's the grave site of Benedict and Scholastica. Piece of history for you that we learned on the way is that this place was bombed during World War II because the United States was looking for Nazis that had absconded. They discovered that there weren't actually any Nazis there. But once the bomb was dropped and the Americans moved on, the Nazis moved in there. But one other blessing occurred, not that Nazis moving into a monastery is a blessing. One blessing occurred, I should say it that way, in that the location of Benedict's and Scholastica's burial sites was a myth up until that point. They had lost track of where they were buried. This bomb revealed that they actually were buried together in the same place. And so now, because of that, that curse turned into a blessing, and we've never lost sight of them since. Hopefully it never happens again. Although I'm sure being monks, they wouldn't mind. Here's some views of the courtyard, and then below the tomb. This is pretty prominent in Italy when you visit tombs of different saints or people. You can pay money to turn on the lights so you can see all the stuff around. So I did not pay money because that's a waste of my money. But somebody else paid money, so I took lots of pictures. Here's a view from the top. Yeah, it's quite gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It's no wonder why Benedict climbed all this way to build this monastery on top of this mountain. I don't know why he didn't choose another mountain, but God chose this for him. So then, after visiting the monastery, we visited this restaurant, and we had like a 7-course meal with lots of delicious food, the most delicious food I had there, I would say. And they were even giving us free stuff, like free coffee. It was just the best, all for €16. Later that night, we returned to Rome, and paid 16 euro and got a kid's plate. So
Wow.
that was definitely the best restaurant.
Wow.
And we had one guide from the North American College. Sometimes they send seminarians there who are intellectually gifted. So he guided us. Now, because we drove the car, we had a lot of extra time. And we discovered that we could visit one other Benedictine site where Blaine wanted to go, and that is Subiaco. Now, we found out that it was about 2 hours away from Monte Cassino, and then it would be another hour back to Rome. We figured that by the time we arrived there, we would still have a half hour before the place closed. So we got there and we walked up. You can see these are the caverns where Benedict prayed. To put things into context, when he was in Rome, he performed a miraculous healing on the people and gained a lot of unwanted attention and popularity, which is why he fled to these mountains. So he was here prior to Monte Cassino. The reason that he moved is because he gathered a following of monks who wanted to practice his rule. And he tried to convince them that the rule was too hard for them to follow. They insisted that they follow it, and so he obliged, and they tried to kill him twice. So as a result, he fled these caves and built Monte Cassino and surrounded himself with people who didn't try to kill him. Here's a view up on Subiaco, the monastery. Here are some cavern paintings of the monks. And as a result of being there, one of the special features is that our little Poverello is painted on the wall there. Now, why, do you ask? You're supposed to ask.
Why?
Because long after Benedict had passed away, the abbot that was there met this Poverello, and he was so impressed by his visit that he wanted him commemorated in the monastery. Now, you can't see it very well, but there are some distinct features about this painting. Does anyone notice? Who can see? What are some unusual things that you notice?
Well, is like the border around it or something, or maybe, I can't see
Yeah.
much.
Well, I'll just tell you because
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to
It
see.
looks like there's a man standing behind Francis.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Who could that be?
Benedict.
The abbot.
Or the abbot.
Oh, okay, now wait a minute, how do you see that?
He's down there.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness.
Well, who's standing?
Here, I'll give you another hint
Yeah.
too.
Oh, no.
Look at this.
Let's see.
Notice anything unusual?
Does he have a stigmata?
No. The reason for that is because he received the stigmata in 1224, but he came to this cave in 1223.
Oh,
Before
before.
the stigmata.
So this is painted while he was alive.
Oh my gosh.
And if you look more closely, his eyes are disproportionate because he suffered an eye disease towards the end of his
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So the image is in incredibly accurate detail, but the most detailed thing that we can take away from this is he was wearing gray, just like us. So, you know for sure Francis wore gray.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
All right, now visiting some of the Franciscan churches. St. John Lateran, this is the place where the rule was approved, and who knows the story of the approval of the rule? Who can tell it? I know Brother Pio does.
Yeah, we know that story. Don't we?
Brother Pio, why don't you tell it? They're itching.
Don't we?
St. Francis was asking for
Somebody
the
does.
approval, and then the Pope has a dream
Mhm.
where he's holding up the church.
Right there, he's holding it up.
Yeah.
You see that?
And you can see that as you approach there,
Uh-huh.
that he's doing that, the way it looks when you
Yeah.
approach the John Lateran.
So, and this image is also depicted in Assisi. I couldn't take pictures of it because they weren't allowed, but there's a lot of mosaics and things inside of the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi. You can see that image of him holding up the church in the Pope's tree. Here's another shot,
Oh, yeah.
more closely, him holding up the St. John Lateran. I also visited San Francisco Agripa. This is where St. Francis stayed a lot when he was traveling to Rome. This is my favorite image of St. Francis helping Jesus down from the cross. And then there was a saint there, St. Carlo di Sese. His body is visible, is on view. And he was a prominent writer, mystic. This doesn't necessarily have any concrete or explicit Franciscan connection, but it is commemorated in honor of St. Bonaventure, so I decided to visit it. There's only one place you can visit that is directly tied to St. Bonaventure, and that's his hometown. And you can't even visit his whole body because it was burned by the Huguenots. So all they have left is an arm.
Wow.
But this was San Bonaventura di Palentino. Took me a while to find this place because it was up on the hill near the Colosseum, and I traveled there independently outside of the group when I had more time. And I said, "How do I get to this church?" And they all said this to me, "Well, it's that way." I said, "Is it free?" And they both said, "Yes." Here's some images inside. There's a beautiful confessional box. I just love confessional boxes. And then this Capuchin playing soccer with this kid. Doesn't he look like Jonathan Rumi? I just thought that was funny. And then I visited the Capuchin Crypt and Museum. There's a lot of information about the Capuchin order, very specific about their details. There's some artifacts and paintings. They have a lot of the Capuchin saints there. There was like an audio tour, so you could listen as you were going through. And one of the very first station said, "Don't rush to the crypt. Take your time in the museum before you get there." And then, some beautiful portraits of Jesus and Mary that the monks had, Francis and Dominic. This painting by Caravaggio was painted specifically for this order, and he requested that it never leave. So this has never been transferred to any museum. It's always remained with the brothers. Yeah, it's Francis holding a skull over the cross. Then, of course, our whole family tree is here. And you can see the different parts of the world where the Capuchins are. Again, these next images may be graphic, so if you're sensitive, shield your eyes. I got into the crypt, where a lot of the bones of the Capuchins are buried. I can't remember exactly. Okay. It is said that in 1729 to 1732, the Maceres Osium, 3 chapels were reserved for the burial of the friars. In 1775, Marquis de Sade visited the cemetery, and basically they carted in all of these bones, like some 30,000 bones, I think it was, into this little chapel here. They had 6 different chapels, and they arranged the bones very artistically. So there's like a pelvis chapel.
Oh.
I just thought, like, if I were not Catholic, this would be bizarre. But I felt such an intimate connection with our Franciscan brothers, being present to them. Sure, they're not saints, but they're still our brothers in heaven, and they're praying for us in a very special way. So, I just think this gives it so much dignity, because we do receive dignity when we're buried in the ground in a casket, but then to exemplify the life in community, even in death, like it's really representative of the life that we're called to live. We don't want to be separated from one another. And it also makes me think, like, when I was in Assisi and I saw St. Francis tomb, which by the way, his bones are on display right now for a limited
Yeah.
time. I saw him surrounded by his brothers, and I thought, that just brought me to tears, because I was like, who thinks to bury people this way? To be surrounded. You might have your husband or your wife, but like your children are in another corner or something, usually. So it's a great gift we have to be buried together as brothers. And then there is a chapel there that's offered for the souls in purgatory, the souls who have passed. Then I made it to Assisi.
That's nice.
I know many of you have been there. Of course, I was ecstatic. I had 2 Franciscan moments in Assisi. One, I thought I lost my water bottle, and then I found it downstairs in the chapel as I was praying. The second one was I thought I lost my keys, but they just swiveled behind on my back. So St. Francis was watching out for me. St. Anthony of Padua. Then St. Clare's Monastery. They're also doing some construction, so I was a little impeded by the crane. Visited St. Carlo Acutis's tomb. Of course, I don't have any pictures of him because they're not allowed, but said some prayers for all of you. And I only spent an afternoon there, and even with all the planning that I could do, I still don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing, so I didn't want to miss my train. But I found out that the Porziuncola is 2 minutes away from the train station, so I was able to spend a holy hour in there and then just walk to the train station afterwards. One thing I learned was, this is, I'm sure you all know this, but it refreshed my memory. Like, there were so many churches that Francis restored, because I thought this was equivalent with the San Damiano, but the San Damiano is another church. But the Porziuncola he repaired after that. So I mean, the image of rebuilding the church still applies, and so I touched the bricks with my hands and said, Lord, let me rebuild your church as you see fit. Here's the cell where St. Francis prayed, and St. Bonaventure built a chapel on top of it to celebrate Mass. It's a little tiny cell, but what more or less can we expect from the minore, the little brother? There's also the spot where he died. They have that marked. And then I also visited San Giovanni Rotondo, which is where Padre Pio is. We had a whole, is it herd?
Must be a herd.
Is that the proper plural? Herd of horses across the road. So I naturally asked, I have a video of it. I asked my brothers in the car, why did the horses cross the road? To get to the other side. Here's inside San Giovanni Rotondo, and there was a bigger chapel that had all these signs that said the body of Padre Pio is this way, so we tried to follow it, and we got lost. We couldn't find it. They told us that the first church we entered in was actually where he was, and they move him there during the winter because there's less traffic. And then my seminarians got to pray. He has foot trouble, and he was a soccer player before he was a seminarian, so they said some prayers over his foot. There's the body, Padre Pio there. Visited St. Paul outside the walls. This is where St. Paul is buried. You can see how grand and massive it is when you walk in. They wanted to build these places to compete with the temples to show how superior our God is to the Roman Greek gods. You can see the shackles of St. Paul there. This cross was reverenced by 2 notable saints. One was St. Ignatius of Loyola. He had his profession in front of this cross. And St. Bridget of Sweden had a mystical vision where the head moved and looked towards her. So this is in St. Paul outside the walls. Some images of St. Peter's Basilica in the evening, at night. I was able to walk through the last Jubilee door on the day that it closed.
Wow.
So I was really grateful to be able to do that.
Hmm.
We visited the Vatican Museum. You could see things. This isn't the exact boat used for Peter and the disciples when Jesus approached them, but it's comparable. St. Thomas Aquinas giving the Summa to Our Lady, Aristotle down there. There's some very large tapestries that they put outside in the liturgical seasons. There's St. Francis receiving the stigmata on the ceiling. St. Peter being released from prison by the angel. This was painted by Raphael after Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. He thought, well, I can do him one better. It's good, but it's not quite. And then there was a whole room full of maps of Italy. Yes, I know we probably should get going with the time.
You're
good.
She's the timekeeper.
Do
Okay.
you want to save time for questions? That would be the only
Sure,
thing that,
sure.
we hate to cut you off though, I mean, this is
No,
This
so
is awesome.
And
fantastic.
I'm free to answer questions
But maybe
individually.
folks might have questions,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
maybe, okay.
Any
good.
questions on anything? That's it. Yeah.
Are you gonna post this online so we can look at the whole presentation?
No. But I'll post this, what we have so far. Well, I can go a little bit further then. This is the cradle of our Lord, allegedly. That's in St. Mary Major. Pope Francis is buried there. Our Lady Queen of Peace, initiated by Benedict XV in the First World War to promote peace between the nations. A lot of different saints' reliquaries. Mary Magdalene's foot was 7 minutes away from where I was staying. So it's amazing to think you could walk around the corner and be at a saint's site. I mean, it's something we take for granted, I think, over there, because like the nearest site for us that's approved is probably Our Lady of Champion, 5 hours away, but we have smaller devotions like Sister Anella's Arvis or Grasshopper Chapel. But I mean, it put it in perspective when it said, like, this is the foot that walked into the tomb of Christ. I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's it.
Wow, yeah.
That really, yeah, I have great devotion to her. Saint Agnes, we visited her in the catacombs. Saint Monica, so Philip Neri, and Charles Borromeo's heart. There's an ancient baptismal font that we visited, so that people would go down in there. We visited a lot of different religious communities. One of the most prominent was this one, St. Egidio. They have a very huge lay ecclesial community. They pray at night. And I know most of you are old enough to remember, around the time that I was born, there was the civil war in Mozambique. And a peace treaty was negotiated in that very room. And so it's commemorated here. On the feast of St. Francis, the civil war ended because they met in this room. And you could see this woman burning the guns and the swords and things. So they have St. Francis with the wolf as a symbol of peace, And then there's the room where they prayed. And we visited St. John Bosco's community. They help women, young children who are prostituting themselves in Latin America. They help them get out and then give them an education. We visited Jose Maria Escriva's burial site. He's buried right beneath this altar. He founded Opus Dei. This baptismal font is the baptismal font that he was baptized in. The Nazis took it, they threw it in the river, broke to pieces. They reassembled it.
Wow, they were reassembled.
Yeah.
Miracles.
And this professor is at my seminary, Monsignor Schlag, and he had a new chalice, so he wanted pictures of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't take pictures during Mass. The seminarians were goo gaga over how neatly these linens were placed around the floor. So I took a picture because I'm of the same vein. And then we visited the North American College where the seminarians are staying in Rome. We have our crest there, Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis. English College, as I mentioned, where those English seminarians were sent to Rome to have a safe formation. then sent back, and then they were often martyred. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we had a priest give a homily, and it was like, I say it's a bilingual mass because it was American English and English. And I said to the guys afterwards, I think I understand some of the people in Italian better than I understood the priest in English.
They say that Americans and British are two people separated by a common language.
That's a good one. I'll remember that. Last stop was St. Lawrence outside the walls. And I visited this beautiful cemetery because the hours are so weird in Italy. They have long siestas, as you know. And after my class ended, this is like the last day before I left, we had a free day. But this place closed at 12, and I left at like 10:30. And it's a 45-minute bus ride. So I thought, if I go the wrong way, I'm not going to make it. But if I do, I'll have 15 or 20 minutes in there, and that's all I need. So I took the chance. I got all the way to the area, and then I took the bus in the wrong direction.
Oh.
So it closed on me, and I knew, I was like, if I don't make it, I'm going to have to prepare to spend the whole day there because it doesn't open again until 4 p.m.
Oh.
So I walked around. I went to a pizzeria, the Pink Panther Pizzeria, that had no pizza. There's graffiti all over the walls in the town. I wanted to climb this tower, but it was a factory tower. It's just like bust, but I went into some beautiful Gothic churches, and then I finally got into the Basilica. I asked for their prayers for my diaconate ordination and of my classmates because they're patron of deacons, St. Stephen and St. Lawrence. And St. Stephen, well, Stephen was my baptismal name, so said a prayer of thanksgiving to my parents. There's their tomb. And then Pope Pius IX is also buried there. He proclaimed the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. And there's my class photo.
That's
That's
nice.
it. Thank you all for listening.
No,
Uh,
thank you.
and you can-